Welcome to those who have joined us for this webinar tonight. So let me just give you a background on Phil ANC Visa Consultancy. It's a registered business with the Department of Trade and Industry, DTI, in the Philippines. I registered this in 2020 because I wanted World to Australia to have an outline in the Philippines. It's actually a rebrand of the W2A Migration Services, which I have established in the Philippines a few years ago. Now, the reason for the rebranding is I wanted to reflect that my company now is providing migration advice for New Zealand as well as Australia, and we will be also helping with your student visa for Canada. And we have partnered with Race Training and Review Center in Baguio to better assist our clients with the English language requirement. So our main office is going to be in Baguio City, and then we will have a branch in Manila. Let's just go through some facts about studying abroad. In December 2019, there was a 54.4% increase in the overall applications that were lodged by Filipinos. That's increase actually, the highest recorded in Australian 31st of December among the previous year. But in April 2020, the enrollments for all sectors grew by 48% in the vocational and educational training and 10% growth for higher education. The Philippines is the 9th largest source of market for enrollments for the international students in Australia. It's the 4th fastest growing in the VET and the 6th fastest growing in higher education. Before COVID, Philippines is the 2nd fastest growing market for enrollments of international students in Australia, second to Myanmar. Of course, that will change with this COVID-19 and the travel restrictions. Now, New Zealand also has about 117,275 international students at the end of 2018. I just couldn't find the stats before pre-COVID, but that has increased as well. Canada, international students have been increasing as well. And I believe Canada is now open for international students to go onshore to study as long as the institution where you're enrolled is in one of their designated learning institutes. Now, what are your reasons for studying abroad? Of course, the quality education that is provided by either Australia, New Zealand, or Canada. You know that if you have a qualification from one of these countries, it will be globally recognized. You also have working rights while studying. I'll go through those working rights and some permanent resident options after you finish studying. Okay, I'll go through the purpose of international students or student visa, the requirements, which are very important, the work rights, visa conditions, and some possible visa pathways, and then some initial investment that you may want to consider. So what are the purposes of international student or the student visa? For Australia, the purpose of Australia providing student visa is to allow students to undertake full-time education and training in Australia. New Zealand's purpose is to contribute to New Zealand's sustainable economic development. They allow genuine students with focus on attracting and developing students who have the skills and talent that New Zealand needs. Canada allows international students to study a career with either a future in Canada or better prospects at home. Now, the requirements. The first thing that you need is a confirmation of enrollment. That's what Australia calls it, COE. New Zealand is the same thing. You also need to have a letter of offer from an institution in New Zealand, and you pay the tuition fee in full after your application has been approved in principle. Canada, the tuition fee is paid for the first year of study depending on which stream you want to apply for. English language requirement is the second requirement that you must achieve. Now in Australia, there are a lot of advertisements in the past where it says no IELTS, no show money. So what this means was when they streamlined the international students framework, they determined different levels for institutions. So if you enroll in an institution that's either risk level 1 or 2, you don't need to provide evidence of your IELTS or your PTE. However, you still have to provide English language proficiency to the education institution, because you need to be able to speak English and understand English to successfully study in Australia. New Zealand, you need to have an overall band score of 5 or equivalent. And in Canada, the minimum is 6 in each band. Now also, that depends on the stream that you're going to apply for. If you apply for the direct stream, you need to have minimum of 6 in each band. Financial evidence, this is what they call show money. Now, in Australia, it's the same thing. You know how the advertisements, no IELTS, no show money. This will also depend on the risk level of the educational institution that you enrolled in to study. The risk level of educational institution change every 6 months, and it's not advertised anywhere. What you need to provide evidence for or declare that you have access to these funds includes your return airfare, the first 12 months of tuition fee, and your living costs, which is $29,041 for the first 12 months for the main applicant. And if you include your partner or your spouse, an extra $7,362. And if there's a child included in your application, at $3,152. You don't have to spend this money, but you need to have access to it. A lot of international students were negatively impacted with this financial evidence because most Filipinos, the show money, the declaration that they provide, they didn't really have the access to these funds. So when COVID-19 happened, they had no way of getting assistance from the financial declaration that was submitted with their student visa application. So it's very important, even if you go to a risk level 1 or 2 institution and you don't have to show the financial evidence, you must make sure that you have somebody who can assist you in times of trouble. Because although you can work in Australia or New Zealand or Canada, bear in mind that you cannot find work straight away when you get to this country. So you have to have some money, a backup money, to help you with your tuition fee or your living costs, right? In New Zealand, the living cost is $15,000 if you study for more than 36 weeks. If it's less than 36 weeks, it will be $1,250 per month. And you have to show bank statements wherein you have held the funds for at least 6 months. Now, if you're pregnant and you're due to deliver in New Zealand, you have to add an additional 9,000 New Zealand dollars. Canada is less. You need 10,000 Canadian dollars for the main applicant, 3,000 for additional member, and an additional 333 for the additional applicant, and 255 if you were going to study inside Quebec. It's more expensive to live in Quebec. And then, of course, depending on what stream you apply for, you have to pay for your tuition fee. The same thing with Canada. You have to show evidence that you have held those funds for at least 6 months. Now, as I said, they are evidence of funds, but you don't have to spend this money. All right? You just have to make sure you have those funds and you have evidence to provide when you apply for your student visa. Now, this is very important for international students wanting to study in any of these countries, but most specifically in Australia. You must have your statement of purpose. They call it different in New Zealand, and in Canada they call it letter of explanation. In Australia, you must address your genuine temporary entry. So there are reasons that you want to study in Australia, the benefit of studying in Australia, and what is going to be your incentive in returning to the Philippines or anywhere in the world if I have some people watching me from outside the Philippines. New Zealand is the same. You have to have a statement of purpose and you have to prove that you are a bona fide applicant, meaning a genuine student. Canada is the same, letter of explanation why you want to study in Canada, and you must also include that you understand your responsibilities as a student. One of the reasons why international student visa applications are refused, sometimes it's based, or most of the time, it's based on what you write in your statement of purpose. Now, I know that there are a lot of educational agents who write the statement of purpose for the student visa applicant. As a registered migration agent, it's one of our obligations that we not write the statement of purpose for our clients. One reason, of course, is you need to write it yourself so that when you get interviewed, you know what to answer. And in your statement of purpose, you write how you've researched the reason why you're studying in that institution, and your purpose. Do a little bit of research and be prepared when you get interviewed. Of course, not all applicants are going to be interviewed, but it's better if you write your statement of purpose. I've had clients who presented statement of purpose, which actually they did not write. So when the case officer calls them, they don't know what to answer. So it's very important you write your statement of purpose. We will guide you, but we won't write it. The other reason why we don't write it is you may get refused, and we hope you don't get refused, but if you do get refused, you may blame us for writing the statement of purpose. It's against our obligation. Okay? So this is the most important thing for Australia, the statement of purpose. Health insurance. So this is one of the requirements for Australia and New Zealand. In Canada, some provinces extend their health insurance to international students. Or schools that you enroll in will have their own medical insurance plans that you can purchase. So in Australia, the overseas student health cover for the entire period of study. It gets very expensive if you go as a couple. And again, more expensive if you have a child included in your student visa application. So you have to be very careful and understand that it gets very expensive. In New Zealand, you also have to have health insurance for the duration of study, except if you are PhD students or holding a New Zealand scholarship. One thing that I must also emphasize here is make sure that you get quotes from different health insurance providers, because they can vary, and you can save a lot of money by looking at other health insurance providers. We can assist you in getting these estimates. And as a registered migration agent, it's also our obligation to let you know that if you get your health insurance through us, we do get a small commission from the health insurance provider, and as well as the education provider. So some education agents will not charge you professional fee because they do get commission from the schools. So nothing is for free. Right, work rights. Now, a lot of advertisements that education agents in the Philippines and even migration agents who work in the Philippines will advertise, if you want to work in Australia, the easiest way is to apply for a student visa. Now, remember, the purpose of student visa is to study and not to work, because you are allowed to work when you're granted the student visa. If you're studying certificate up to bachelor, you can work 20 hours per week or 40 hours a fortnight. When the school is in session, you can work full-time during school holidays. And those who are studying masters by research and PhD students, they can work full-time. Secondary applicants, so your spouse who will join you in Australia, can only work full-time if the primary student is studying masters or PhD. If they're studying certificate or bachelor, you can only work the 20 hours per week or 40 hours per fortnight throughout the entire validity of the student visa. New Zealand, the student can work 20 hours per week. Your partner has to apply for a separate visa. It's called partner visa, based on a student visa holder. They can work full-time all throughout. And the dependents, when they join the student visa holder, can study in New Zealand and pay domestic student fee from primary to secondary school, which is different in Australia. If your dependent joins you in Australia and if they are school age, they have to pay international student fee, which could be a lot. In Canada, you can work on campus, off campus for 20 hours per week during school sessions and full-time during school breaks. They also have co-op placements and internship. Don't get fooled when they say you can go to Australia and work and apply for a student visa. It takes a while for you to find a job. Yes, you may earn $25 an hour, but of course when you start, it will be less than $25 an hour. I'm telling you the truth here. I don't want to paint a picture of apply for a student visa and you can work in Australia and everything will be rosy. We want to help those genuine students to apply and study in Australia, but we don't want to give you the false hope that you apply for a student visa and you can work and pay for the money that you borrowed for your student visa application. So the summary of the visa conditions, and there are lots. One is, of course, you have to maintain your study requirements. So keep on studying. Don't stop studying. I have a client apparently was advised that if they get married and they have a sponsor, they can stop studying and they'll be fine. Be very careful. This is not correct. You have to go to a migration agent or an advisor and get advice from them because education agents do not have the migration legislation requirements knowledge, all right? Then you have to maintain your health insurance. This is another thing that I have discovered from a lot of international students, not only Filipinos, because health insurance for couples is more expensive. Some of them tend to or have been advised that you can take health insurance as a single applicant. The problem here is when you have to claim health insurance, it will be declined if you were a couple because you're supposed to have health insurance for couples. Also make sure that you abide by your work conditions. They're very strict now. They will find out if you're working over the 20 hours per week or the 40 hours per fortnight. Now, once you've spent all the money and you've studied your course, the visa pathways that you may be eligible for would be a temporary graduate visa. Now, if you studied bachelor and above, it will be the post-study work stream for Australia. And you can be granted 2 years or 3 years, an additional 1 year if you studied in a regional area. So you have to study and live in the regional area. If you studied a diploma or trade occupation that makes you eligible for an occupation in the medium and long-term strategic skills list, you may be eligible for the graduate work stream. This may or may not lead to permanent residence because, of course, the occupation list changes and it depends on whether you have sufficient points to apply for the skilled migration visa or whether you have an employer who's willing to sponsor you, either for a temporary work visa or for a permanent visa. New Zealand has a very good post-study work visa. It will depend on the level of study and whether you studied outside Auckland. And you can have from 1 to 3 years of post-study work visa, which could lead to other visas that would make you eligible for permanent visa. For this purpose, because this is all general information, don't take what I've said from the beginning up to the end as migration advice. You need to have a consultation with me so that I can give you specific advice on your specific circumstances. Now, Canada has also a very good post-graduation work visa, and for permanent visa, there will be either the express entry or the provincial nominee program. As I am not a licensed immigration advisor for Canada, I can just lead you to their website for you to understand what is available in Canada, but we can assist you with your student visa application. Now, everyone, of course, will ask, how much do I need for a student visa? For Australia, your initial investment could be from 192,000 plus installments for your tuition fee, because in Australia, most education institution will allow you to pay your tuition fee in installment as long as you pay the initial deposit and enrollment fee. For the university, you have to pay the first semester of the tuition fee. For university, if you want to study bachelor and above, you may be looking at your initial investment of $1,000,000 pesos. In New Zealand, it could be from 105 plus your tuition fee. Now, of course, again, the tuition fee will depend on what you're going to study and where you're going to study, whether it's a certificate, a diploma, or a bachelor. It gets more expensive if it is a bachelor's degree. In Canada, it could be from 81,500 pesos plus your tuition fee. Now remember, if you are going to go and apply through the student direct stream for Canada, you have to pay the tuition fee in full. And now, that's my presentation. I will take questions. If you can type it in your comment section, or you can log into our Facebook page, Phil ANC Visa Consultancy, or you can go to our Facebook page for World to Australia. Thank you again very much for attending this webinar. If you have friends who have missed the webinar, this will be up on our Facebook page for them to watch, and they can send us their questions through the comment section. Now, the other thing is you have to make sure the choice of your course is relevant to your previous qualification or work experience. Of course, you can change your career, but you have to really include in your statement of purpose the reason why you change your career choice. You may visit our office in Baguio. We have Aya and Heidi who can assist you. But as I said, in order to give you proper advice, we have to do a consultation where I will assess your specific circumstances and advise you on your career choice and help you research so that you write a very good statement of purpose.